Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this episode features my friend, choral director, educator, and really awesome human, Dr. Kelly A. Miller. Dr. Miller is the coordinator of music education and professor of music education and director of choirs and all cool things at the University of Central Florida. Now, that might sound familiar because you've also already heard from the director of choral activities from the University of Central Florida, Dr. Jeffrey Redding, earlier in our podcast history. But anyway, today we're talking to Dr. Kelly Miller, and we are talking about the power of asking questions, how to get through burnout, and ultimately live life with no regrets. If you haven't already looked at the quote cards that I made for this episode, she gave me 2 pages of really awesome quotes, and I think it's the perfect time of year for this episode. It's the end of the semester, it's the end of the school year, summer is coming, and burnout is real. So if that's you, listen to this episode with hope. It's okay to question. Live your life making decisions and know that whatever decision you make is the right one. And nothing is forever. Don't take it from me, though. Take it from Dr. Kelly Miller. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Kaleidoscope Adventures and the Kinnison Choral Company. You can also join the community over at patreon.com, but more on that later. Let's get to living with no regrets and questioning all the things with Dr. Kelly A. Miller. Today on the Music Ed Matters podcast, we are talking to choral educator, choir conductor, and awesome human being, Dr. Kelly A. Miller. Hello, Dr. Miller.
Hello. Hello. Very excited.
I am so excited to finally have you on the show. I remember walking up to you. I don't even remember what conference. It might have been Mobile. And you were hanging out with Jeff Redding. And you were like a rock star to me because I had seen so much about you and heard so much about you. And I'm like, hi, I'm Emmy.
That is crazy. Oh, it's so fun. This is exciting.
I'm thrilled for the guests to hear, for the listeners to hear you as a guest because you have so much to share. Not only are you an incredible human and musician, but you have such a really cool story. I want the listeners to know, who is Dr. Kelly Miller?
Well, we've talked a little bit about this. I'm a small town girl from South Dakota, and I went off to college thinking I was going to play volleyball, and I was getting a music minor, but I had all these scholarships, and then so I may not have seen eye to eye with the volleyball coach, and then decided to join the marching band. And my advisor before class even began my freshman year said, let's just work on this minor, and put me in all the music classes. And after a semester here, I am a music major. And I got an undergraduate music education along with 3 coaching endorsements. And I was the first music major ever and really when I started teaching, and I started teaching as a band director, a high school band director. And I also did a little bit of coaching too. It was like the craziest human, and something I could have only done when I was really young.
Wait, what all did you coach? I didn't know this about you.
It's crazy. It's just absolutely. I did a little bit with gals basketball and a little bit with volleyball. I wasn't a head coach, but would go in as an assistant and then would sometimes be on the court with the team and then run over and get the pep band going. But I trained my students, my drum majors, to do the pep band. So it's just a crazy time. And it feels like a different world ago, because after I taught high school band, and I was in a small community. So there was only one high school. So I started at the high school band. Then I would go to the middle school band and assist. And then I would do elementary beginning band for like 4th and 5th graders. So I would go from the high school to the middle school to an elementary every single day as an itinerant band director, but would teach the high school band and AP and theory first, and then head off. So I did that for 3 years, and then went to get a master's. The master's was actually, because it's a big old story about the whole band thing, because I ended up taking the place of 3 teachers, and I was burnt out and couldn't, and they were going to I was doing the job of 3 people, and they were going to keep that on. So I needed to not do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And my undergraduate choral director knew that there was an assistantship available with, again, I was a band director, so I didn't know that Z. Randall Stroop was a name in the choral world. So I went and did a master's with Dr. Stroop, and from there ended up in Orlando, where I am now. Or I'd gotten my master's. So after 3 years of being a band director, got a master's, did a lot of orchestral conducting during that master's time period, but then switched to choir, or what my band friends call the dark side, switched to choir, and moved to Orlando from the Midwest to Orlando, and got some incredible experience. In Orlando, I got to open a high school, and it's such a rare gift with the most amazing principal ever. So opened a high school, wrote the alma mater for the high school. I mean, who gets to do that? It's the coolest thing ever. Yeah, the band director wrote the fight song. I wrote the alma mater, and taught for 8 wonderful years, went back to get a doctorate up in Michigan. And then my first college job was in Illinois, and then got a call from Orlando, and have been in Orlando. I've been at University of Central Florida for 10 years. And I love Florida. I love Central Florida. The amount of support for music education in my area is incredible. And so I just absolutely love it. So at UCF, I'm now the coordinator of music education. So I run the Bachelor of Music Education program, and I have 3 choirs. I have the soprano alto choir, unauditioned, come one, come y'all, unauditioned tenor bass choir. And then we just started a community choir this year. So 3 choirs along with all this great music education. So I get to still have a little bit of that band director when I go to observe some of our interns in band and orchestra. So I have the best of all worlds. I have the best job ever. So,
oh my gosh. Okay. But this is, fantastic. I have to ask some clarifying questions. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
What was your instrument?
Ooh, I was a flute player, but I did a little bit of saxophone with jazz, not a lot, but a little bit. So flute playing.
And when did you start playing in the band?
This is, I wish we still did this. I started in 4th grade. So took beginning band in 4th grade. My big thing though, while I love the flute and I still play, I love for what we call it music performance assessment in Florida, but it's a district contest or something like that, whatever you call it. I love being the optional C instrument for middle school and high school choirs. I love, jumping in and playing whenever I can. But my experience and what has really just paved and my philosophy of education, how I do everything, was because I was a drum major for so long. I was a drum major for 2 years in high school and then 4 years in college. And so it's being a drum major and the leadership that I experienced in a high school camp and bringing that all over to the choral side of things. So that's a lot of, I love working with leadership, choral leadership, and it's all through the lens of having been a band director and through the idea of marching band. Because what I love about marching band is that it doesn't matter what period in the day you have band, you're all in the marching band. It's one big family. And I just love that so much. And there's so much student leadership involved with that. I love to carry that over. And I love battling the stereotype that the choir students aren't as active as the band students, and love just defeating that stereotype and showing what choirs can do, and giving students, middle school as well as high school students, the opportunity to conduct and be the director. And there's so much more that they can do in leadership than just take attendance. And so it's kind of, again, I experienced this incredible camp when I was in high school, and so much of how I do what I do is because of my 2 heroes from having taken that camp. And it's now called, the organization is Music for All, but at the time it was Bands of America. And so I've worked for that company as a site specialist for many years, but my heroes to this day are just a part of everything that I do. Such incredible experiences. And so from this little teeny tiny town in rural South Dakota, and now University of Central Florida is the largest university in the United States. So it's just an incredible journey to think that this gal was able to kind of leave the safety and security of a small town area. I'm very much small town, and have just been blessed with so many incredible opportunities. So
I love this story coming from something so small and being willing and excited and capable to take on something so big. I want to talk about a couple other things before we dive into my favorite information you gave me in the pre-chat. So you played flute, you started in 4th grade, you were a drum major. Can we talk a little bit more? You kind of hinted at student leadership. What are some of the student leadership things you fostered as an early teacher, as a mid teacher, and what are you teaching your pre-service teachers now about leadership?
I think one of the biggest things that I discovered as a first-year band director was the power of the definition of teamwork. And to me, teamwork is truly defined by musical ensembles. And again, this is someone that has 3 coaching endorsements. I love the athletic world. I love so many things about coaching and athletics. But I looked over as a high school band director, I looked out on the marching band field the football field. Listen to me, my musical bias. But I looked at it, and so even though I'm from South Dakota, my undergraduate is in Nebraska. So I was teaching at a small town or a smaller community in Nebraska. And I looked over at one Friday night football game, and that's what you did on Friday nights is you went to the football game. That was the social community. And I looked out on that field, and there's only 11 players out on the field. And in Nebraska at that time, there was probably 100 young gentlemen suited for varsity. So they're all suited, but there's only 11 out on the field, and everybody else is on the sideline. And then I watched the band go out and take the field, and we had about 110, 120 probably around there. And every single one of them is a varsity player. Every single one of them is a starter. No one sits on the bench. Everyone plays the entire game. There's no substitutions. Goodness knows there's times when I'd love to be in my choir, substitution, and please, Miss Soprano, you come here, and then Mr. T. I'd love to do substitutions, but that's not how we do it. Everyone is a part of everything. So the magical definition of ensemble, I think, really is teamwork. And so that was such an important thing that I discovered just in that first year of teaching. And the leadership of the band, the hierarchy, the structure of leadership is something that I wanted to bring over to choir. So one of the things that I did was I had a summer choir camp that was like a band camp. And we are working on, all of the fundamentals that a band works on, we would work on in our choir camp. And we would be working, and I would teach the student leaders to run the camp. So I was there, but I didn't run the camp. That was all done with student leaders. And they're the ones teaching, knowing how to do warm-ups and teach technique and work on tone. We have something in Orlando called Disney Candlelight. If you are a high school, director in Orlando, you start working on your audition soon. So we were all, in July, here we are singing Disney Candlelight music and Christmas tunes and just made it a part of our community, our program, and teaching students to run that and letting it be all them. And I think that was something that was really great. I have a wonderful story of it was the preschool, 2 weeks before the high school began, having choir camp. So I went to copy something or do something in the workroom, and there was a gathering of substitute teachers. And they're arguing, and I'm like, what's going on, folks? And they were actually arguing about me. And I'm like, school hasn't even started yet, and the subs are all, what's going on? They were arguing on who would get to be the substitute for the choir when I was gone, because they didn't have to do anything. The students ran everything while I was gone. They did all the teaching. So they wanted to just sit in the room and watch the students teach and listen to the choir rehearse. And I'm like, they were literally fighting about, so that they wanted to know all the dates I was going to be gone for the year. They're fighting about who gets to take what day. I thought this is this is pretty special when your substitutes are fighting over when you're going to be gone, and then how much they want you to be gone was something to kind of reconcile with.
You would teach these students how to lead.
Yeah.
How would you do that? Did you have them come before the camp? Did you have a team that you were raising up throughout the year? How did you develop those student leaders? How do they know what to do?
And it's, when you're taking on a new school, you have to see you have to honor what has been done in the past and gradually work in your own philosophy. So it's not like I just, started now. Opening a new school, I could do some very unique things, but just slowly giving them a lot of, I'm such a control freak. That's why I drove a manual transmission until a few months ago, because it's all about control. So designating is very hard for me, but I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't run the band, or I couldn't run the choir by myself. So I really needed help. And they needed to have more experience and responsibilities than I mentioned before, just taking attendance. So I would teach them throughout the year how to start and stop the choir. They didn't have to be incredible at the piano. They need to know where the starting pitch is, because the choir is so disciplined. And if you're just going from do up to sol and back down, they can do that. Just give them a starting pitch and we're good to go. And so did a little bit of conducting, a little bit of piano, and then just leadership skills and how to be in front of the choir. So we would do a lot of preparation. For example, I would have large groups of on my leadership team, but I only want the best way they can be a leader is to be in and amongst the choir. And I love just, if there's too much talking, to be able to just say, okay, leaders, fix this. Because that's what, and if there's 12 people up standing in front of the choir, because they're all the leaders, I'm not focused on what the one is saying. So it's teaching them only have one person up in front of the group at a time. If there's a bunch of people up there, I'm looking, oh, those are really cute shoes. Oh, he changed his hair. I'm so distracted. So just those kinds of basic things that even though you're all leadership, one person at a time is talking. Let's have the rest of you in showing from modeling how to be quiet and not talk. And that's so hard, to be the person that has to tell your peers who might be older than you not to talk, or your best friend who you sit next to in the bass section, and you've got to tell that bass to not talk. I mean, that's one of the best examples of a leader is a role model. And so just trying to go through a lot of different information that will help them be strong leaders. And then there was a day during camp where music teachers have a preschool meeting, and I wasn't even on campus. So the parents would be there. I was fortunate that my piano player was our curriculum resource teacher, so she was there with them, but the students ran everything. And so then you just see the development. The freshmen are looking up to these junior seniors, these upperclassmen, and they're learning how to be a leader just by watching. It's that senior that's greeting them at the door as they come in. One of the most important parts of our choir camp was Choir Olympics, which we would have on the last day in the afternoon before. We would have a demonstration performance, an informance in that first evening, which was our first parent meeting. I didn't tell the parents that, though, because that's when I can get them all there. They think it's the concert, but that's when I'm gathering all the information on their communication details, emails, phone numbers. I always asked what they did because I wanted to get parents involved in the program. So just little information thing thrown out there in the midst of this choir performance. And it was just demonstrated, we've learned solfege. Here's what the scale looks like. Here's what we're going to do, different when we teach music literacy. And my students did all of that. I might introduce it, but student leaders led the choir program in doing that. And so it was the idea too, that this is a whole program team, not just individual choirs. And I also loved, because this was so valuable to me going into high school, I loved that because back in the day, and I went to high school many, many years ago, but we had some hazing. If you were a freshman coming in, it was scary. And so to have seniors that are looking out for you day one. And we would have a preschool day where the seniors would meet their choir freshmen and they'd help them get around campus and help them open their locker. And it felt like protection, because it's a big deal going from either, elementary into middle school or middle school into high school, and to have that wonderful sense of this person is my friend and has my back is so incredibly valuable with all of the peer pressure of today. So all of that came from community, from the relationships that were created. So for me, it's all about communication. Great leadership is about communication and letting those students have ownership of the program. Now, again, it's controlled ownership. Don't think I'm not. I'm leading them to the answer that I want, or the yes. outcome that I want. So I'm not handing over the program. They can think that, but that's not how it's going to go down. But that's all from just hands-on ownership. Lots of really great influences. I just think that students learn best in my experience from positive influences, and a positive attitude that's reinforcing an individual's strengths can further build and encourage self-esteem and self-image. And my whole idea and philosophy of education is about building self-esteem. I happen to use choral music to do it, or I happen to use instrumental music to do that. And there's so many life skills that we learn from being in music, and that if we can just create these lifelong supporters of music, then that's huge for me. Whether it's they go on, and I'm always telling high school seniors, I don't care if you're going right into the workforce, a 2-year college, a 4-year college, find a choir to be involved in, whether it's a community choir or your church choir or synagogue, or whatever you can find. That there's just something about that sense, or you're a supporter of the arts and a supporter of music. Just so we're creating these lifelong musicians and artists that can just keep being filled by music and can keep giving back to their community through music. I think that's probably like a really crazy long answer.
No, I love it. You hit on everything. You gave us how you developed your leaders. You told us they were the juniors and seniors, that it was something you grew as the program went on, what the responsibilities look like, how it all built the community. But what I love is all these little definitions you kept dropping about building the whole human. It wasn't just music. Music was the medium.
Yep.
It's exactly. A perfect segue into something I want to hear your perspective on. So you mentioned in your pre-recording notes that when you began your journey as a band teacher, as a music educator, you were one of the only female band directors in your area. What did you learn from that experience, and what can we as listeners take away from that as well?
I've just recently, I had one of my college students that wanted to interview, and I haven't thought about this I think this is my 27th year teaching. And so I haven't thought about it in, literally can use the word decades, which is terrifying to me, but exciting as well. You don't know what you don't know. And so because I'd been a drum major for so long, I was used to being a leader and just did my job. And didn't really didn't look around me or whatever. I've always put students first. I think you can't go wrong as long as you're putting students first. So just thinking about students' needs and what they needed, I didn't look around too much until it was about my second and third year when I realized, wow, there isn't anybody else that looks like me. And not only was I the only woman that I can remember, I felt like I was the youngest. It seems like, and I use this age now, and it's hard for me to, but they were all like over 40, which I thought was so old at the time. Bless my heart. Now I can, I shudder at thinking. I know exactly, but at 23, you thinking, oh gosh. And so, there were some real challenges that I worked through that I didn't even realize at the time were challenges, because I just did what the students needed me to do. But looking back, I think, my goodness, it was much harder than I realized it was at the time. So, the whole idea of ignorance being bliss, I think was part of that. But I had outside support from folks that, through Bands of America and things that I didn't realize were such support, or I didn't realize how much I needed it until I look back now and was able to have a lot of folks, supporting what my students were doing. The band was doing such wonderful things that I was so proud of their accomplishments, what they were doing together. I didn't realize that, how poignant it was being the only woman that I could think of that when I look back and think, I don't remember there being anyone else that I could speak to. I also being in a smaller community, it was the only high school in the county. So, I would travel to do different performances with the band, but I just didn't have an opportunity to really see anybody else that looked like me. And so I look back now, and what I encourage everyone to do is, it's about the students. Keep that your focus. I think that is huge, but it's also just do your job. Mm-hmm. Just do your job. And it's any time that we have so much more support systems now, that anytime anyone needs to do that, whether it's, a gender issue, ethnic background, financial background, whatever it may be, there's so many people that we can go to and that look like us, that sound like us, that I think it's just important to take opportunities. You don't have to do it alone. I happened to do that at the time, and I wouldn't have to do that today, because there's so many folks in our, even if you're teaching at a small rural community, there's so much more resources available to us now with technology and different offerings that take advantage of that. It's so important. We had a Florida ACDA meeting last night, and just the pre-talk before going into the meeting, it's just so great when you hear other people with the same joys, the same challenges, when it's not just you. Mm-hmm. So because the end of the semester, this is a really hard one. We're not back from this pandemic. Everybody is tired. Everyone's crawling I have such huge appreciation for all teachers that, it's just incredible, because we're not there yet. And everybody is just doing the best they can. And it's such an important thing just to hear other people are struggling. They have that parent too. They have that challenging student too. The students are as tired as, over here as over there. And it's just, there's so much available for support. We must take advantage of it. And every educator should know they're never alone. There's always so many folks that can be helpful. And I think it's really important to have now. I would have loved to have had a small circle of folks that I could talk to. Again, you put your head down, you do the work. I think we still do that too often. I think women still do that too often. We just put the head down and do our work, especially women that are, have kids at home and all sorts of other work that they are doing. We need to make sure that we are checking on folks. We need to make sure that we as directors are talking with folks, as conductor teachers, that we're not holding things in, that we need to talk. We need to make sure that we are expressing anything that is just challenging, because there's always challenges in what we do. So let's capitalize that with having other people, just again, hearing that they're going through the same thing, as well as getting support from one another.
It sounds like there's a theme here, a theme of the power of community, both as leadership and as the community in your place of employment, in your choir, in your band, but community as colleagues. And you're right, the world has changed so much in that we can connect so quickly. We can toss on a podcast and listen to someone else telling a story or find out some information. Yes. We can use the resources of ACDA and other professional organizations that have so many resources for us. We can FaceTime, Facebook, Absolutely. Instagram, there's so many ways. But I hear this community thread ringing through. So here's a question. When you were burned out and chose to go back to your master's degree, I know a lot of people right now are feeling that pain of burnout. And we're hearing stories left and right of teachers leaving.
Yes.
You ultimately left your band community to join what your friends called the dark side, the choral community.
Well, and I had started, just I'm going to real quickly. There had been, I'm trying to be careful so that I'm not. It was hard for one of my colleagues to have a female band director at the high school. So retired. And so I took over. I ended up by the end with different circumstances that happened. I was the high school band director, which is what I was hired to do. And then I was the head of the middle school band program. And then I ended up head of the high school choral program. And so that's the 3 jobs that I was doing. And my principal was so supportive, but I had received a contract for my 4th year that was no longer specific to what I was supposed to do, and was basically told by the superintendent, you'll do whatever I tell you to do, whatever I want, whatever we need you to do. And it was just too much. And the students had continued to do great. So it was good, but there is a point where you must put that self-care first. And I'm so grateful that I had an undergraduate choral director, Dr. David Bauer, who I adore, that contacted me, knew what was kind of going on from looking in, and said, okay, here is someone I want you to talk to. I know you're going to go home for spring break. Omaha is on your way up to South Dakota. So why don't you, stop and meet with this person? And so I think that there's 2 things. We have to understand that it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to always question what we're doing and looking at, again, our undergraduate degrees are K-12 everything. I mean, that's what it's everything. And I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Yes, I sat first chair for flute in my undergraduate band, but I was taking applied voice. I wasn't taking flute lessons. And I didn't know I still am trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And I think that's healthy. And I really, and that's something that I actually had learned from Dr. Stroop. It's healthy because if you need to question and look at different opportunities, you'll be stronger. If you choose to stay where you are, you looked and you decided it was important to stay. So now you've made a great decision. If you decide to change and do something different, it's healthy that you looked and made those decisions. I always tell and right now, it's such a different time in a teacher shortage. Students I have students that are looking at, should I do general elementary or should I do high school choir? And they have both opportunities. And I just tell them, whatever decision you make, it's the right one. Mm-hmm. It's the right one. At that given time, that's where you're supposed to be. If you decide after 3 years, you want to try, I'm the living example of, if you decide you want to do something different in music, great. As a band director, if I had to pull one more trumpet mouthpiece that was stuck, I might have hurt someone. I was so tired of being the fix-it shop. And again, I don't know what it was about my trumpets. I had to pull so many mouthpieces. It made me insane. I also missed text. I missed poetry that choir offered. So it wasn't. And again, I love when one of my colleagues lets me direct the band or the orchestra. I actually feel more at home with instruments than I do with choir. And I've predominantly done choir the majority of my career, but there's just something that brings me home when I'm in front of the band. But how wonderful that music, we can have all of these opportunities, and yet it's still all about, for me, creating self-esteem, building self-esteem in someone. So I think it's healthy to be questioning, because no matter what your decision is, it's the right one for that time. You never look back. I choose in my life personally not to have regrets, because every life experience has led me to another decision. I may need to change decisions, but that's because life has given me more opportunities and I've got more experience. So I think it's healthy. I think that, there are folks that find different ways to be in music education. Healthy. Just no regrets, no looking back, and it's okay to try something. It's okay to learn that you need to stay put. Either way, you're going to be good to go.
I love it. What great advice to question whatever it is you're
Yeah,
doing and be okay with it. I love that because so many times we're asking, are we doing the right thing? Because we're
right,
comparing, especially
right.
right now at the end of the semester. But
Oh,
what you're saying is so powerful.
but
Students
it's
first and
isn't that
question.
that comparison game is something it drives me crazy. We teach a music major to compare right from the beginning because you're learning in your applied study. This is right. This is wrong. You're put in a studio class where you're singing or playing in front of your peers, learning this is right. This is wrong. This is good. This
Hmm.
is not. This is better. We teach these music majors to compare and then all of a sudden go, okay, don't compare. I'm trying to, I always I don't want the interns to compare their
Hmm.
internship experience because they're in different communities with
Hmm.
different personality teachers. You can't compare, but it's what we want to do naturally. And it's what we train them to do. So how can, don't, it's really a challenge. And so that, I think that just permeates and is part of our training that we have to sometimes combat. And
Hmm.
it's okay to go because that's how I learn. Oh, you know what? I like that choir sound. I want to learn to do that. So I'm
Hmm.
going to find out all I can about how they teach and what they do. And that's the educators, bread and butter when we share. And it's, if you can take that comparison, but learn it's about giving and receiving, sharing, learning. I mean, hopefully we're all lifelong learners that will continue to seek out better information, different knowledge, or be reminded of something that we've forgotten. Oh, I forgot about that warm up. I love that. That's so helpful. I mean, but that's it, taking that comparison that may come naturally and using it in a very healthy way and knowing that it's okay. And it's all, it's not only is it all right to be, a woman band director, but to be strong and to be fierce and to be feminine all at the same time, or
Hmm.
whatever it means. We're always battling stereotypes, whether we're looking at more gender diverse issues, what have you. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to check out different opportunities, and it's okay to just stay where you are but maybe look differently at your schedule, or what can I change within, or going to administration and saying, okay, is it possible to change when I have a free period, or can I add, different things like that. It's healthy. And it's so challenging to see teachers after 3 years want to leave the profession, because I know it's hard. They're in the intro to music ed class I teach, I don't candy code anything. This is hard, but it's the best job ever.
Hmm.
And so anything that we can do to help grow lifelong teachers, I think is healthy. But there's also I find there's a protection of the profession. It's not for everybody. And so ask the questions, try different things, take that extra class. We have, at UCF, you can be a non-degree seeking student and take an extra class, or,
Hmm.
go get that ORF certification level 1 and challenge, as a high school choral director, and re-challenge how we learn different things. I think there's so much possibility out there, but we do have to be active. You have to actively seek out. You can't wait to be acted upon. There's leaders and followers, but even with followers, I try to teach my students to be active followers,
Hmm.
not waiting to be acted upon. At least go seek out the information.
Right.
That's all. You don't have to be the leader of this. Just seek out the information and ask questions. And because that's talking, and that
Hmm.
will be so beneficial to so many folks. Just asking questions, I think is great.
These are so many great tips. We've covered the gamut of not just a journey and overcoming things like coming from a small town to the largest university, overcoming burnout and reinvigorating a wonderful profession, but also what to do.
Yeah.
Question,
Mhm.
redesign, challenge, no regrets. This has been such a great conversation. I know this is what I'm going to listen to whenever I fall into the comparison trap.
Well, it's just I think a wonderful gift. What a crazy, wonderful, very challenging thing it is to be a teacher of any discipline. but I think it's the most honorable profession there is.
I love it every day too. I kind of sort of miss teaching classes, and it's only been a week.
Exactly.
Right?
But
don't tell them too loud. This has been so much fun. We have to continue our conversation another time soon. But before we go, I always give the guests the opportunity to share one thing that really matters, what you want the listener to walk away with.
I think, just because what is stuck in my head is the importance of self-esteem. And self-esteem is your perception of what others think of you. Your self-image is what you think of you. So this isn't self-image. It's not what I think of myself. It's the perception of that we have of what others think. And that's something that we need to always make sure that we are working on. How can we build our self-esteem? Because I think that gives us such energy to be fearless and to go out and just try anything and learn new things and bring that back to the classroom. So self-care, building our own self-esteem and make sure that it's an ongoing process. And it's okay to take a day to go to stay at home and do your laundry and, do the dishes and things that will make you a stronger teacher. I think I always felt that if I take one day, something is, and I had a wonderful mentor, Carolyn Manier, who was the supervisor for the arts in my county. And Carolyn has from Tennessee, has a little bit of an accent. And she knew I needed to take a break. And I said, well, I can't, it's MPA is coming up and then there's the concert. And she said, Kelly, and because she talks a little bit softer, she said, Kelly, if your program falls apart in one day when you're gone, we've got greater things to talk about. And so just working on self-care, self-esteem, because that's going to make you a better teacher. You'll come back a stronger, better teacher because you took that day. So however that needs to manifest, I think is really important.
And no regrets, no matter what.
No regrets.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been an honor. Thank you.
All right, that's it. You know me. What was your favorite part? What was your favorite quote? I have a lot of them. I really love this idea of living with no regrets and that whatever decision you make is the right one. Because nothing's forever. Just like Dr. Miller said, we have to demonstrate that it's okay to ask questions and to question what we're doing daily. Nothing is forever. It's okay to make changes. Look at that incredible change Dr. Miller made 3 years into her career. Holy smokes, can you imagine? She went to the coral dark side. Anyway, I'm so thankful that you listened today. I'm really excited that we all get to call each other colleagues and friends in this amazing yet challenging world of music education. If you need a community to be a part of, jump over to patreon.com/musicedmatters. I would love for you to join us over there. And every single dollar that you spend goes to making sure that the podcast stays alive as we pay for the platforms that it takes to host all this stuff. And I always send the guests a little present for their time. Anyway, now you know. If you have any questions, just shoot me a message, emilybirch.org/contact. Okay, that's all the housekeeping and that's all the fun. In case no one told you today, my friend, you matter. We all know that music matters, especially being music educators. And I'll see you next time on the Music Ed Matters.